This is fiction. We got a couple you get. If you haven't and you're a game designer, you should read The Design of Everyday Things. Great book. But this is the problem. The masochist teapot is what you're doing if you're just saying, oh, I create a platform. Well, it's like saying I want to build a teapot without thinking about what a teapot's for, what it does, what you actually want to deliver to your end user when you're creating. Saying something along the lines of, I want to deliver to my players a series of reflex-based challenges that are easily intuitable because they understand the underlying mechanics, because they mirror actions in their daily lives. This is a much closer start, right? This is a much more honed definition. This is the sort of place that you should be trying to get to when you're starting out on your project. Because this helps you define what your core engagement is, how you're engaging your players. And if your players are these guys, well, yeah, you're probably building platformers because, well, they understand running and jumping. If your player's that guy, you might be building a shooter or a racing game, right? But the answer is different, right? A platformer is not your cover-all answer because a platformer doesn't talk about engagement. Many different platformers engage in many different ways. What you care about is not the overarching skinning of a game, what it seems like on the surface, but what it delivers to the person who's going to end up using it. So when you're making decisions in a game, when you're actually building out your product, how do you decide if your decisions are reasonable? Anyone, any thoughts? Yes, right there. Up, hit me all the way back here.
Maybe if your idea is reasonable for a kind of thing that you're using, with the kind of money you have, the kind of time you have, for the experience you want to bring the player.
So it's very good, right? You should all, as designers, have an answer to this question, right? I should ask this question, and you guys should all be clamoring to answer. Because if you're a designer, right, you need to know how to judge your own decisions. This is clearly a key skill. But I mean, I agree with the statement that was made. To me, there's sort of a tetrad of production, right? I have 4 things I look at. I look at my budget, my schedule, the amount of complexity my decisions add to the game, and how much they add as far as engagement. I do these in hierarchical order because budget, how much does this decision cost in raw dollars? Because, well, schedule is equally important, but I can usually buy more time for money. I can't always turn time back into money. And my second question is, how much time is this going to take with the team that I have? And then how much complexity, which we're going to get to, this is add to the game, for the engagement I'm delivering out. When weighing a decision, I mean, these are the 3 things that you're always costing every decision you make. And as a designer, it's your job to get the most of this for these 3 things. That's what you always want to be doing. There are lots of great decisions. There are infinite great decisions you could be choosing to incorporate in any game you make. But we're designed for reality. We're designed for a real player. We're designed for a real budget, a real team. So when we design, we have to ask ourselves, how am I getting the most bang for my buck? How am I delivering to my audience the best possible product I can, given these 2 things? So when weighing those, the most difficult of them is this idea of complexity. Many players, when they make the jump to wanting to be designers, want to see lots of depth in their games. And that's true, that's right? Depth is great. But one of the things we often don't realize is that it's on a paired axis, that it's on a scale with complexity. Every decision you make in a game adds complexity to that game. So, even a game as simple as Mario, right? Well, Mario can walk and jump. Well, can he run and jump? Sure. But that makes the game more complex. It makes it harder to immediately approach. How many of you guys have played Europa Universalis? We got 2, 3. So anyway, 4, all right. Europa is a great game. If you're a designer, you should check it out. But why is it a great game? Victoria 2 is an even better example of this. It's a brick wall. It's got infinite depth. This is a game that, if you've ever really wanted to micromanage the European economy down to the individual person during any given day or month of, say, I don't know, the 14th through 17th century, done, they got it for you. But those decisions brought a ton of complexity. And so this depth ends up not meaning anything to most of us, because engagement is how engaging the depth is, the amount of depth it's running, minus the complexity, because something's only as engaging as a player can interface with it, right? And something's only as engaging as a player can actually interact with that particular mechanic or system of your game. So, I recently saw a game that was all about rocket jumping, right? And rocket jumping is a fascinating thing, because rocket jumping is our typical example of immersion gameplay. Well, as a designer, immersion gameplay secretly is actually just depth you didn't realize was there. But the problem with this game was that while pointing and shooting is simple, it's very direct, rocket jumping is actually a complex, a very difficult thing to execute, to wrap your brain around for most people. And so this decision, most players couldn't interact with the majority of the game, because they could do the pointing and shooting part, but they couldn't do any of the rocket jumping part. And so the team might as well never have built that section, because they didn't do enough to deliver that to the player. So your job as a designer is, whenever you're adding complexity, weigh that carefully, and then do everything you can to mitigate it, right? We've seen lots of different ways. World of Warcraft has taught us how very much you can ease players into an experience. I remember back when, during the EverQuest days, we believed that MMOs were the most hardcore of experiences. That you would never, ever, ever get 30-year-old moms to play an MMO. That was an impossibility. And they showed us that really, if you're really just careful about how you introduce your complexity, if you spread it out over a long time, if you take each piece and understand the complexity that that adds to your game and ramp it down, you can deliver any experience. And these couple of simple metrics, your budget, your schedule, your complexity, can be taken on the macro level, on your huge overarching experience. You can ask yourself, well, how does my whole game concept weigh against each of these things? But we can ask that about every little aspect. We take some specific mechanic, same thing, same questions. You can look at this across the board. Anything that you're adding to your game should be weighed against those four categories. So, how do you know if you were right in one of the decisions you made? Anyone?
People like your game.
All right. So how do we know if people like our game?
Because they're not insulting you.
So I hate to tell you, but the internet means that everyone will insult everything. But you're correct, right? The first way to know we're right, the best way to know we're right, is to go out and play this. Unfortunately, we need to know we're right earlier in the process than that. You should be getting out to play test as early as possible. And if you guys want, I can actually throw a whole other video lecture about playtest, because I think it's one of the most important things we do, getting out, getting your product in front of real human beings, and iterating on it as fast as possible. But earlier in the cycle before that, we have to have some metric as designers to understand whether or not our decisions are correct, are doing what we want them to do. So, for me, the first and hardest part is to get out of your head. As a designer, you are immensely close to your product. You'll know what you hope to deliver. You'll be very used to the quirks and the difficulties inherent in the game that you were creating. I can't say who, but I once was consulting for a project where they literally expected the player to hold the controller upside down. They thought this was great. They thought, oh man, no. As soon as you've sat it before anyone, there was a human being who wasn't your team, you who'd been playing it for 10 years, this game was impossible, right? We had added a lot of artificial components. So your first job as a game designer is to get out of your head and really put yourself into the role of the player. Play your game like a player, but observe your play like a designer. Watch what's happening to you as you try and go through this experience. I already hit the word observe, so there's our observation. And then be totally honest with yourself. One of the hardest things to do as a game designer is to not have that moment where you say, it'll all come together. It'll all work out if I just had all the systems in. That's generally not true. Be completely honest with yourself and be aware of what you're doing. But if you're having a hard time with this, one of the most useful techniques I've found when I'm really trying to move out of just being a designer, looking at my own product, and trying to sit myself down and play this thing as a player, is to go find something that is similar to the product I'm creating. And as much as we all hate to admit it as designers, 90% of anything you do will be similar to things that other people have done. And so there are always these products. There's always another shooter you can play next to your shooter. By doing that, and then picking back up your controller, and side-by-siding those experiences, registering how you felt while you were playing this crafty piece that you believe executes brilliantly on something that you were trying to execute on, and then playing yours, you'll feel the difference. You'll feel those moments where something seems just a little off. If you're really honest with yourself and you're really observing yourself as you play, you'll be able to capture those moments and drill down and really look into those moments and say, wait, what was I trying to deliver? Where is my core engagement for my player? And why is this not solving that as well as this other game? Since I've been on a platformer kick, I saw this a lot recently. We've seen more and more games that have incredible, realistic, wonderful physics systems that allow us to do a ton. But if you guys all remember, right, you go play it back, you play your Mario. Your Super Mario Bros., you'll find that Mario can run, jump, and if you don't remember, you turn around in the air, and I know I'm not going to make that jump. I turn around, and I can land back where I started my jump. But you see a lot of modern games, a lot of modern platformers, you do that run, you do that jump, you turn around, and you miss, and you fall in the pit and die. And the reason for this is because we moved the character controller over to the physics system. So you've got preservation of momentum. So your player character is now zipping this way, and because he's moving this way, as soon as you press that back button, he doesn't turn on a dime like Mario used to. He slows down, turns around, and then dies. This doesn't deliver on the core experience that you're trying to create, right? The player has realized their error, wants another crack at it immediately. There's no reason to punish them further, because you only need to punish them if they have not had any concept that they were making an error. And you'd realize this if you were to play these things side by side. But I see games ship all the time with this sort of thing, and then get hammered in the press because, for some reason these controls don't feel right. Well, as a press person, it's okay to say these controls don't feel right. But as a designer, you should have sat down with another product and really asked, wait, why don't these controls feel as good as this other thing that was trying to do the exact same thing that I'm trying to deliver here? All right, so then there's the big question of innovation. So how do you answer the question of, I've got a piece of my game that I think is radical, it's new, it's something that nobody's seen before. How do I know if it's good? Well, we in the games industry often love innovation. I mean, I'm probably one of the most guilty of this. I will urge you all to go out and try new things, because I believe it's the only way to push the medium forward, only way to really improve what we do. But for all of us, many of you guys have probably played 10,000 hours of games. You guys have probably played 500, 1,000, 2,000 different games. So at this point, you're jaded, you're biased. You have a different experience than your player base will have. And so very often those things which are new are in themselves interesting, compelling, good, even if they're not really good. I always reference this. Any of you guys seen a lot of or even any weird art house films that are just totally out there and you don't get it all, but so for some reason the critics thought was really awesome. The reason is because those critics have to go see a movie every day of their lives and write about it. They can tell you the generic Hollywood plot arc, like back and forth. They could write them themselves, no problem. And so the moment they see something that they couldn't tell you how the whole thing is going to go from the very beginning, that's a great thing. Missing that for most of the people we're trying to serve, it does nothing, right? So complexity in and of itself isn't always good. Chair, very innovative chair. Not necessarily delivering on the core engagement, core utility that I want out of a chair. So how do we answer this? We go back to the same question. We just ask ourselves, how do we do that? And we've had this whole talk, and really the only point of this talk was to tell you, weigh the bang for your buck on everything against this question. Because this is the most important thing. You can ask this for every single decision that you're making. You say, if you've really established how you want to engage your player, when you say, oh, we should add power-ups, well, does it help how I'm engaging my player? And is it the best use of my resources? Those are the only two questions. That's really all design is. So, to me, it's really simple. We don't build without thinking. We understand that we're not crafting for ourselves. There's lots of designers wander into the territory of building the things that they would love to build, or the things that they would love to play. But we're building for our player, and you may not be your player. You start by establishing a problem. You're trying to figure out something that you're trying to solve. And once you've got that, you build a blueprint, and then try to execute on that blueprint. Your problem, how to engage your player. That is the sole and only problem in game design. For the most part. You may have other challenges. You may, on occasion, be, how do I trick the player into giving me as much money as humanly possible? But I'm just going to say that the sole and only problem with game design is, how do I engage my player? And so, with that I mean, the heart of game design really is just simply creation with purpose. All right. So thank you guys. I'd love to have Q&A, or if you guys wanted, since I did say we could talk more about test. If anyone's interested in test, I can also give a spontaneous, on-the-fly mini lecture about test, because I was really thinking about it for the last half of that. You guys want one? All right, fine. Okay, jacket's off. And this is truly on the fly, so I have no idea. So, very often for small game firms or for beginning designers, I see this reluctance to test. It's almost aversion to test. They begin testing way too late. I very often hear, oh, my players, they're just not going to get it because we're not done enough. Or I hear, well, I'm just going to get all the complaints that I already know about. And by the way, if you ever say that, you're totally wrong and should rethink your career. And then I get people who have a million other excuses, but maybe are just shy, right? For a lot of us, turning our games over to playtest is a lot like playing a song or reading our manuscript to other people, right? This is your soul out there, and they're almost certainly going to trample all over it. So, we have to get past it. The first thing I hear about you guys is to let you know that it is literally never too early to play test. As soon as you have blocks moving on the screen, or even often before that, for me, I will program up a set of cards to mimic my game, or even grab into a room. You have no idea how many times I walked through a scenario, a level design with people. I'd have one person play the camera, one person play the player, and other people play, and you just walk through the experience, and you learn a ton, right? I mean, you can figure out most of those bad camera angle moments. You can figure out where you want to place your cinematic shots by doing nothing but standing up in a room and trying to imagine it. If you really have to, duct tape out where the room is within the big space you're in. But all of these things provide